You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next hour. Labour Party wins massive majority in the UK general election. Keir Starmer to be UK's new Prime Minister says change begins now. Rishi Sunak says Britain has delivered a sobering verdict.
Change begins now. And it feels good, I have to be honest. 4.5 years of work changing the party. This is what it is for. A changed Labour Party, ready to serve our country, ready to restore Britain to the service of working people.
Iranians vote in the runoff presidential election. Tight race between lawmaker Masoud Pezeshkian and former Revolutionary Guards member Saeed Jalili. Results expected by Saturday. Hopes rise in West Asia as US claims breakthrough in Gaza ceasefire talks. Says Hamas has made significant adjustment over hostage release deal. Israel sends delegation to Doha to resume talks with Hamas. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacts with Paris Olympics bound Indian contingent, extends best wishes to the athletes. So Keir Starmer is set to be the UK's next Prime Minister after his Labour Party secured a historic victory in the elections. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservatives registered their worst ever poll performance. Also, the Liberal Democrats have made huge gains and are third in terms of seats so far. And Nigel Farage has been elected to Parliament with his right-wing Reform UK party. A report.
UK on Friday woke up to a massive Labour victory. Newspapers splashed headlines like Labour landslide as the Keir Starmer-led party ended 14 years of Conservative rule. Addressing his supporters, Starmer, who is now set to become the Prime Minister, said that change begins now.
We said we would end the chaos, and we will. We said we would turn the page, and we have. Today we start the next chapter. Begin the work of change, the mission of national renewal, and start to rebuild our country.
Coming from a humble background, Starmer is relatively a new entrant to politics. It was an uphill battle for the lawyer-turned-politician. He took over the reins of Labour only 4 years ago when the party was going through a tough phase. Under him, Labour challenged the Conservatives over the falling living standards in the UK. The polls have come as a major blow to PM Rishi Sunak-led Conservatives, which has registered arguably its worst election performance. Conceding defeat, Sunak said that he had given his all.
I take responsibility for the loss. To the many good, hard-working Conservative candidates who lost tonight, despite their tireless efforts, their local records of delivery, and their dedication to their communities, I am sorry.
Meanwhile, world leaders have already started congratulating Starmer. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that he hoped that Starmer builds a progressive, fair future, while Australian PM Anthony Albanese called Labour's victory resounding. Other leaders who extended felicitations to Starmer include EU Council President Charles Michel and Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Bureau Report for DD India.
And DD India's Stuart Smith joins us live from London on the story, and I'm also joined by former senior Indian diplomat Prabhu Dayal in the studio. Welcome to both gentlemen. Stuart, to you first. The results have shown a historic verdict for the Labour. What leadership qualities and what vision will Keir Starmer bring to the Labour Party as Britain's next Prime Minister?
Keir Starmer is actually a late entrant to politics, only joining his political party at the age of 50. He's 61 now, and his main career experience comes from his role as a chief prosecutor in Britain. That's why he was knighted. That's why he's Sir Keir Starmer here. And largely his attitude to politics and the way he presents himself has been characterised as quite managerial, almost quite dull in a sense, which is something that has actually served him quite well during this campaign. A man who's trying to differentiate a Labour Party from a turbulent Conservative Party where there was a perception of a lack of discipline and a lack of seriousness in politics. For him to present himself in that way as a kind of dutiful public servant seems to have gone down quite well. Keir Starmer is somebody that says he wants to make him differentiate the Labour Party of new from the Labour Party of old, from the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, who is far more polarising in his politics and far more polarising in his presentation. Keir Starmer, in comparison, appears quite neutral, and again, for this kind of campaign, that seems to have worked. Now, as to what his vision is for the country, he's directly addressed many of the issues that voters have complained about on the doorsteps, from the National Health Service being underfunded and under-resourced to the cost of living crisis causing problems, and he's also helped to some extent, he's promised to help address the immigration crisis in the UK just differently to the way the Conservatives have done it. But I think what he really brings to this campaign that most voters were looking for during this vote is a sense of competence, stability and seriousness in politics, which with so many Conservative Prime Ministers over the last few years and a sense of instability is what was sorely looked for by the electorate.
Okay, Stuart, how far did Rishi Sunak's style of leadership contribute to the massive electoral defeat this time?
His personality has not been at the centre of this campaign. Largely with the attack lines from Labour and the comments from voters has been about the Conservatives in general. Now that includes David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and of course Rishi Sunak as well. The whole host of leaders, all with very different personalities and associated with very different successes and failures. So it's not him as such that has been at the centre of this debate. He brought something different than Boris Johnson did, for sure. Rishi Sunak was far more centre than Boris Johnson, was far less charismatic, but that also served him quite well. No, at the heart of this campaign, it's been less about Rishi Sunak and more about his party's record in power.
And Stuart, how do you see the future of the Reform UK Party? Could it replace the Conservative Party as the principal opposition to Labour, as its leader Nigel Farage hopes?
Well, they've been doing so much better in this election than was expected. That will be a boost to Nigel Farage, and it will mean that he will be in the Parliament for the first time, along with a few other MPs as well. As to what that means, it's not expected that he will try to take over the Conservative Party. There's a possibility the Conservative Party will look to reform success and borrow some of their ideas and the way that they ran their election campaign, that's for sure. But Nigel Farage right now is the leader of his party. He has unparalleled privileges to lead that in the direction that he likes. The Conservative Party is a far more structured and traditional machine. He would not have the same level of freedom to initiate the same kind of policies and run the party the way he would like if he were, for example, to join the Conservatives. Every indication from Nigel Farage so far is that he would like to be Prime Minister, but he would like to be that at the next election with his own Reform UK party. And we'll have to see how that optimism goes down over the next few years.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Stuart Smith joining us from London. Labour Party under Keir Starmer has adopted a more pro-India stance compared to the party's previous leadership under Jeremy Corbyn. In its poll manifesto, Labour Party said that it will seek a new strategic partnership with India, including a free trade agreement. It also sought deepening bilateral cooperation in areas like security, education, technology and climate change. And at the India Global Forum last year, Starmer said that a Labour government will seek with India a relationship based on shared values of democracy and aspiration. And next, to understand what Labour Party's win means for India, I'm now joined in the studio by Prabhu Dayal. Prabhu Dayal is a former Indian senior diplomat. Welcome, sir, to the program. Do you see the change in power in the UK affecting the free trade agreement between India and the UK currently being negotiated? Do you see its speedy implementation now?
Well, Danvi, first of all, thanks for having me in your studio to discuss this very important issue. You have rightly asked this question, whether the change in government will have an effect on the conclusion of the India-UK free trade agreement. This issue is very important. We have been wanting a free trade agreement, but the government of Rishi Sunak had some reservations on some issues, and because of these, full progress was not possible. Now, the new Prime Minister, Mr. Keir Starmer, has clearly said that he would work towards the speedy completion of work relating to the free trade agreement, which is a very positive sign. Of course, he has also said that he would focus on building a new strategic partnership with India, and that the focus would be on issues like climate change, technology, and a security partnership. So it does seem to me that the new Labour Party leadership, which will take over the reins of power in the United Kingdom, will be very serious about strengthening the relationship with India, and this is only natural because there is an increasing global realization that India carries weight in the global system. India is the world's 5th largest economy and steadily moving towards becoming the 3rd largest economy. So to have a healthy relationship with India is certainly in the interests of the United Kingdom, and that is what the perception of the new Labour-led government seems to be.
And so what about issues of immigration, temporary visas for India's services sector workforce headed for Britain? Could that be affected?
You know, Britain has a shortage of skilled labour. For instance, in the healthcare sector, there's a shortage of doctors, there's a shortage of nurses and other personnel who are essential towards running the healthcare system efficiently. So it is in the interests of the United Kingdom to allow skilled labour, skilled workforce personnel to come to the UK from India. And I think that there will be deliberations on this, there would be discussions on this, and I'm sure that any impediments would be removed. It's another matter that the new government will be tough with undocumented workers, you know, the illegal migrants, because that is a very big issue in the United Kingdom. And the previous government had adopted the Rwanda plan, and which was opposed by human rights activists and others. But there will be tough action taken towards such illegal migrants. But as regards legal migrants who are needed by the United Kingdom, there will be some positive steps taken, and I think that would be in the interests of the India-UK partnership.
Okay, so overall, how do you see India-UK relations are likely to be affected by the change in government in Britain?
You know, let me first point out that the previous leader of the Labour Party, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, had not been so understanding and sensitive on issues relating to India. He had made some statements relating to Kashmir which were definitely unfriendly, and they didn't go down well either here in India or with the Indian origin British citizens. Now, the new Labour Party leadership led by Mr. Keir Starmer has been at pains to assure the Indian origin British nationals and also the government of India that he is interested in a stronger relationship with India. In fact, very significantly, he went recently to the Swaminarayan temple, and it was from there that he launched the India-UK strategic partnership. So I think he's serious about the relationship with India, and that augurs well So there will be continuity in several directions, and there may be some acceleration towards the benefit of the bilateral relationship.
It's quite a historic win for Starmer. We'll have to see how India-UK Free Trade Agreement, as you also mentioned, would take shape. Thank you very much, Prabhu Dayalji, for being with us on DD India News. Still to come on the show. More on the UK elections with our guest, Dr. Nigel.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I am Tanvi Taneja. Let's get you more about the man of the moment, Keir Starmer. His party has won a landslide in the UK elections. Starmer took charge of Labour in 2020. This was after Labour Party suffered its worst electoral defeat in 84 years under left-wing veteran Jeremy Corbyn. Starmer will be the oldest person to become British Prime Minister in almost half a century. And to understand the verdict of the UK elections, we are now joined by Dr. Nigel Fletcher, political historian from King's College London. Dr. Fletcher is also the co-founder of the Centre for Opposition Studies there. Welcome, sir, to the programme. Do you see the Labour's victory more as a vote for the Labour Party or more as a vote against the Conservative Party?
Well, that's a very good question, because one of the things that you have to consider when you're looking at British electoral politics is this perennial question of do oppositions win elections or do governments lose them? And really the answer to that is that it's a bit of both. But in this election, there does seem to be a case for saying that this is much more to do with the Conservatives losing the election than Labour winning it. And if you compare this, for example, to the 1997 general election, where Labour won a huge landslide under Tony Blair, their vote share there was in the sort of 40s. They were in sort of 43, 44% of the vote. And the Conservatives were down at 30%, and that resulted in a huge Labour majority. In this election, Labour are much lower than that. They're into the 30s in their vote share. But they are still achieving a huge majority because the Conservatives are so much lower. Their vote share is down in the 20s. So I think on that basis, we can say that this is a vote against the Conservatives rather than it is a vote for Labour.
Labour Party leader Keir Starmer, who is said to be the next Prime Minister of Britain, has said that change begins now. So what are the major changes that Labour is likely to affect in the UK?
Well, it's quite a funny one because he put that word on the front of his manifesto, just the single word, change. And I was sort of up all night going around different election events, and lots of the Labour supporters were wearing badges and stickers, some of them wearing baseball caps with this word change on it. And the funny thing is that the way that Keir Starmer has managed to assemble such a popular electoral offer is by not offering an awful lot of change. Jeremy Corbyn, his predecessor, offered a very radical manifesto of all sorts of very expensive policies. But Keir Starmer and his incoming Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, have tried to reassure people that actually not very much is going to change. They're not going to put up taxes. They're not going to make much of a change to spending, for example. There's lots of things that that they're talking about in terms of doing them better, but actually the policy offer is really quite slight. So it's kind of ironic that they are offering change when a lot of their offer is that reassurance and trying to tell the British people that they're not scary, they're not going to do lots of dramatic things.
Dr. Fletcher, what do you see as the main challenge facing the new Prime Minister? How far is the gradual recovery of the world economy and Britain's economy likely to help the Labour Party achieve its economic goals?
Well, the big problem that he has got is that, unlike Tony Blair in 1997, there isn't very much money. Britain is still suffering from the after effects of COVID, where a lot of money had to be spent, but also the effects of the spike in energy prices, and that caused an increase in inflation, which is only slowly coming down. So the economic picture for Keir Starmer as he takes office is a lot worse than it was for New Labour in 1997. And so there isn't much room for manoeuvre. And the independent financial experts, the IFS, have said that Labour will have to either cut spending or increase taxes in order to make their sums add up. And Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, the incoming Chancellor, have rejected that and said that what they're trying to do is to stimulate economic growth and that will pay for their plans. But in the short term, that's very difficult to do. So they do have lots of very difficult decisions ahead of them. And I think they're really going to be trying to manage expectations. Lots of people who were fed up of the Conservatives wanted to get rid of them and have managed to do that quite effectively overnight, are looking to Labour to do lots of things that they've promised to do. The expectations on them are going to be very high, and unlike the previous Labour government when it came in, they don't have the money to be able to fulfil a lot of those objectives. So it's going to be a difficult one for them to try to manage people's expectations and to do things differently and to show competence, but without that sort of economic headroom that they might like to have.
Rishi Sunak has claimed responsibility for the loss. Do you think the decision of calling a snap elections in May, even when the Conservatives were trailing Labour by some 20 points in opinion polls, was a very wrong move?
Well, I think in retrospect, it does look as though it was a very bad decision. But you have to understand, I think, why he might have thought it would work. One of the big things that has damaged the Conservatives in this election has been the rise of the Reform UK party under Nigel Farage. And by calling the election early, I think Rishi Sunak hoped that they wouldn't have enough time to mount a proper campaign. And in particular, that Nigel Farage himself would not stand in the election. At the start of the campaign, he said he wasn't going to, and that would have really reduced their appeal. What happened in the first couple of weeks was Nigel Farage changed his mind, announced that he would stand for Parliament, and of course that then increased his coverage and a lot of attention was paid to them. And they've done a lot better in this election than they might otherwise have done. So that failed as a tactic by Rishi Sunak. And the other thing I think that he might have wanted to call the election early for was because, frankly, things could have got a lot worse. There is not a huge amount of good economic news coming along. There's a few promising signs. But with the state of the Conservative Party in particular, they really were starting to fall apart and argue amongst themselves. And as that's gone on, the Conservative poll rating has gone down and down and down in recent years. And I think that one of the parts of his calculation will have been that he was concerned that if he hung on for even longer, their poll rating might have got even lower. So I think calling it early was perhaps an attempt to stem the damage and to try to make the best of what was clearly going to be a very bad situation.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Dr. Nigel Fletcher, for this analysis. We really appreciate you joining us. Okay, let's move on. In France, a far-right National Rally Party will likely fall short of an absolute majority in the forthcoming parliamentary elections. The opinion poll saw National Rally Party win 205 to 230 seats in Sunday's vote, ahead of the left-wing New Popular Front with 145 to 175 seats. And French President Emmanuel Macron's centrist bloc with 130 to 162 seats. More than 210 candidates stood down on Tuesday in a bid to try and block the far right, post which the polls suggested that Marine Le Pen's RN will not win a majority of seats. Undeterred by the polls, National Rally President Jordan Bardella presented himself on Thursday as the only one capable of getting France out of its blocked situation.
We cannot waste 3 more years when the world is moving forward, when Europe is moving forward, faced with the France's economic security and identity currently deadline, including its voice on the international scene. I tell the French, I am the only one who can obtain an absolute majority. Allow me to move the country forward around 2 ideas, the restoration of authority and the revival of our economic system.
Et la relance de notre appareil.
While French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal recognized the failure of the presidential camp to stem the rise of the far right, which he noted is not limited to France.
This risk of a majority dominated by the France unboard fell in the first round. Now, the risk is that of a majority dominated by the National Rally, by the far right. I think that is deadly and would be terrible for the country. I really say it with depth.
Il a été réélu en 2022.
Now, from the elections in Europe to elections in the United States. Admitting his weak performance in last week's debate against former US President and Republican candidate Donald Trump, President Joe Biden vowed to fight on in the election race. Addressing military families at an Independence Day event at the White House, Biden said that he wasn't going anywhere and yelled out to supporters to keep up to the fight.
This could not be done without the family support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you, and I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not going anywhere. All right. All right, I'll come back out when they open the gate, okay? Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Here in Asia, voting is underway in the runoff presidential election of Iran. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei exercised his franchise at a polling station in Tehran during the early hours of voting. Polling began at 4:30 hours GMT and will continue till 14:30 hours GMT. This vote is a tight race between lawmaker Masoud Pezeshkian, the sole moderate in the original field of 4 candidates, and former Revolutionary Guards member Saeed Jalili. Preliminary election results are expected to be released by Saturday morning. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's take a quick look at other stories making news around the world. With protests intensifying in the Kenyan capital, the police is apprehending protesters to break down the movement. The protests that started since last month were against the tax hikes burdening the already troubled population. Many protesters suffered serious injuries in clash with the police. Protesting against President Daniel Noboa's decision to remove fuel subsidies and an increase in taxes, citizens in Ecuador marched on the streets near the government palace. The palace was guarded by riot-blocking police. And one of the highest volcano in Europe, Italy's Mount Etna, has become active after 4 years. Etna's Voragine crater has showed intense activities, prompting authorities to close the Catania airport of Sicily. Simultaneously, a red alert was issued due to the increased volcanic activity of Mount Stromboli. You're watching DD India News. Are still to come on the show. Russia not in a position to declare ceasefire in Ukraine, says President Vladimir Putin. Indian Army set to participate in the 13th edition of India-Thailand joint military exercise called Maitri. And after leaving a trail of devastation on its way through the Caribbean islands, Hurricane Beryl moves towards Mexico.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Thank you for staying with us. I am Tanvi Taneja and you're watching DD India News Hour. A quick look at the headlines we're tracking at this hour. Labour Party wins massive majority in the UK general election. Keir Starmer to be UK's new Prime Minister. Says change begins now. Rishi Sunak says Britain has delivered a sobering verdict. Iranians vote in the runoff presidential election. Tight race between lawmaker Masoud Pezeshkian and former Revolutionary Guard member Saeed Jalili. Results expected by Saturday. Hopes rise in West Asia as US claims breakthrough in Gaza ceasefire talks. Says Hamas has made significant adjustment over hostage release deal. Israel sends delegation to Doha to resume talks with Hamas. On to the Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Russia's defense ministry announced on Friday that it is conducting military exercises involving mobile launchers for nuclear missiles. The drills, which will cover a distance of over 100 kilometers, aim to practice deployment and concealment techniques. The initial phase of the exercise will involve missile launcher crews from 2 units, with additional crews set to join the drills later on. Earlier on Thursday, President Vladimir Putin said Russia has begun research and development work on new intermediate-range missiles and is ready to start producing them, but will not deploy any missiles unless the United States does so.
In connection with the withdrawal of the United States from the Treaty on the Elimination of Intermediate-Range and Shorter-Range Missiles, and the announcement that they are about to begin production of intermediate-range missiles, we also consider ourselves eligible to begin research on development and, in the future, production of missiles.
President Vladimir Putin also said that Russia would not declare a ceasefire in Ukraine until Kiev takes steps that are irreversible and acceptable to Moscow.
We simply cannot go ahead and declare a ceasefire now in the hope that the other side will take some positive steps. This is number one. Secondly, we cannot allow the enemy to take advantage of this ceasefire to improve its position, rearm itself, boost its army through forced mobilization, and be prepared to continue the armed conflict. We need to ensure that the other side agrees to take steps that are irreversible and acceptable to the Russian Federation, and therefore a ceasefire without reaching this agreement is impossible.
2 days after urging ceasefire during his Kiev visit, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said that he was not in a position to negotiate between the warring sides amid reports of him meeting Putin during the Russia visit on Friday. Orban, a critic of Western military aid to Ukraine, said the fact that Hungary currently holds the bloc's rotating presidency does not give him a mandate to negotiate on his behalf.
I do not need a mandate, as I do not represent anything. All I do is go to places where there is a war or threat of war that threatens the European Union and Hungary or has a negative consequence on them, and clarify facts and ask questions.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a phone call with the US President Joe Biden on Thursday. During the talks, Netanyahu said he has decided to send a delegation to resume the stalled negotiations on a hostage release deal with Hamas. US President Joe Biden welcomed the development, which comes a day after Hamas responded to a Gaza ceasefire plan he outlined in late May. The last indirect talks took place in Cairo earlier in May. Israel's spy chief David Barnea is traveling to Qatar to resume the Gaza ceasefire and hostage release talks, which will likely take place on Friday. The Mossad chief is also expected to meet Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani in an effort to bring together Israel and Hamas on one table. In the latest escalation of the conflict along the Israel-Lebanon border, Hezbollah fired a barrage of rocket and drones towards northern Israel. The Israeli military said around 200 projectiles were launched towards the Golan area, a number of which were intercepted by Israeli defense forces. While 20 suspicious aerial targets were identified crossing from Lebanon into Israeli territory, in response, Israel claimed to have struck launch posts in southern Lebanon. New Delhi will host the foreign ministers of the BIMSTEC grouping next week on July the 11th. BIMSTEC, or Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, is a 7-member grouping which has Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand as its members. The grouping basically includes countries that border the Bay of Bengal as its members, working towards cooperation in the region in several areas. An Indian Army contingent comprising 76 personnel is in Thailand for the 13th edition of India-Thailand joint military exercise called Maitri. Maitri will continue till July the 15th. The aim of this exercise is to foster military cooperation between India and Thailand, enhance combined capabilities in executing joint counter-insurgency terrorist operations. Indian Ambassador to Thailand, Nagesh Singh, spoke to DD India about the growing defence and security cooperation between the two countries.
Defence and security cooperation is one which has grown the most in the last decade. We have the annual defence dialogue with Thailand at the level of secretaries. Then we have the annual staff talks at senior general level or the vice admiral level or vice marshal, air marshal level between India and Thailand. All the three forces. Our armed forces do a lot of exercises together, bilateral, and they also participate in multilateral exercises. Our coast guards, there's something called Thai MEC, which is the counterpart of the Coast Guard. They do exercises. There are regular visits of our ships here, and Thai ships go to India as and when, they want to. Our senior officers train in institutions of training like the National Defence College or the Staff College here in Thailand. Thai Army officers, Air Force and Navy officers go to India. Now the relationship we are looking at is building on the defence industrial production side. I mean, this is the Thai interest to collaborate with us to create they know our prowess in terms of defence production.
And next we take a look at other stories making news in India. Airbus, a pioneer of the global aerospace industry, and Gati Shakti University signed a memorandum of understanding on Friday. According to the MOU, Airbus and Gati Shakti University will work together to develop academic curriculum as well as support sector-related programs. The MOU was signed in the presence of Union Ministers Ashwini Vaishnav and Ram Mohan Naidu. Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, on Friday urged citizens to take part in a special Lok Adalat in the Supreme Court. This is for amicable, speedy resolution of cases. The special Lok Adalat will be organized in the 75th year of the establishment of the Apex Court. Justice Bidyut Ranjan Sarangi takes oath as the 15th Chief Justice of India's Jharkhand High Court on July 5th. Governor C.P. Radhakrishnan administered the oath of office to Justice Sarangi at the Raj Bhavan in Ranchi city. Chief Minister Hemant Soren and Speaker Rabindranath Mehto attended the swearing-in ceremony besides several judges and senior government officials. On to some weather updates now. First from India, the flood situation in India's northeastern state of Assam remains critical, with over 2.1 million people affected in 29 districts. 52 people have lost their lives due to the floods so far, while over 39,000 inmates are taking shelter in relief camps. Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma reviewed the situation in Dibrugarh on Friday, which has been under water and facing severe power shortage in the recent days. Meanwhile, the India Meteorological Department has issued a red alert for states of Assam, Arunachal Pradesh in the northeast, as extremely heavy to heavy rainfall is expected. An orange alert was issued for sub-Himalayan West Bengal, Sikkim, Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Tripura and Nagaland as well. After leaving a trail of destruction on its way through the Caribbean islands, Hurricane Beryl is moving towards Mexico now. The storm that is slowed down to Category 3 passed by the Cayman Islands after passing through Jamaica, where it claimed 2 lives. Mexico has issued red alerts for its tourist spots, asked citizens to stay indoors during the storms, and hotels and restaurants and coastal businesses have made preparations, while citizens have packed their fuel tankers and much more to deal with the incoming storm. Schools have been closed and storm shelters have been prepared ahead of the expected flooding. This is the first storm of the season with a record peak. Scientists blame climate changes for such extreme weather patterns. In the United States, the Thompson wildfires in California continue their blazing trails with just 7% contained. These fires are burning around 3,568 acres so far, threatening buildings and structures. The untamed blaze has forced evacuation of some 13,000 residents in the proximity. The high temperatures and shifting winds are making it very difficult to douse the flames, though efforts to prevent it from spreading further are at their maximum. And back to our top story. Well, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated Keir Starmer on his victory in the United Kingdom's polls. In a tweet, the Prime Minister of India said, and I quote him here, "Heartiest congratulations and best wishes to Keir Starmer on the remarkable victory in the UK general elections. I look forward to our positive and constructive collaboration to further strengthen the India-UK comprehensive strategic partnership in all areas, fostering mutual growth and prosperity." Prime Minister Narendra Modi also expressed gratitude towards Rishi Sunak for working towards deepening India-UK ties. In a tweet, he said, and I quote, "Thank you, Rishi Sunak, for your admirable leadership of the United Kingdom and your active contribution to deepening the ties between India and the UK during your term in office. Best wishes to you and your family for the future." So, Prime Minister Narendra Modi extending best wishes to both Keir Starmer on the win and Rishi Sunak for guiding the country in the course that he was the Prime Minister. Still to come on DD India News Hour. India's defence industry hits a new high with the highest ever production value in 2023-24. And in sports, it's the night of the clash of the giants in Euro 2024 as hosts Germany take on Spain in the first quarter-final, Portugal to take on France later in the night. And ace Indian queuist Pankaj Advani books a spot in the final of the 2024 Asian Billiards Championship. All that and more on the other side. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, DC.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Tanvi Taneja. India has hit a new milestone with significant growth registered in defence production with around 1.27 lakh crore rupees recorded in the financial year 2023-24. According to official reports, the value of production was recorded 16.7% higher than the value of production of previous financial year. The value of defence production has increased steadily since 2019-20, registering a growth of 60%. The data states that of the total value of production in 2023-24, defence public sector undertakings and other public sector undertakings contributed 79.2%, whereas private sector's contribution stands at 20.8%, indicating significant growth in the sector. Acknowledging the achievement, Defence Minister of India Rajnath Singh highlighted the significant progress of the Make in India initiative. He reaffirmed the government's commitment to make India a global prominent hub for defence manufacturing. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also lauded India's highest ever growth registered in defence production in the year 2023-24. Sharing a post by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, the Prime Minister of India said, very encouraging development on Twitter, X that is. He also gave his compliments to those who have contributed to this feat. He also wrote that, and I quote him, "We are fully committed to nurturing a supportive environment to further enhance our capabilities and establish India as a leading global defence manufacturing hub. This will enhance our security apparatus and make us Atmanirbhar, self-dependent." And a lot is happening in the sporting fields. Time now for some sporting action. Up first, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the Indian contingent that is heading to the Paris Olympics. He interacted with them in New Delhi on Thursday. India is set to dispatch approximately 120 athletes to Paris, aiming to surpass their achievement of securing 7 medals in the Tokyo Games. The Indian Prime Minister conveyed his unwavering belief that India's contingent heading to the Olympics will definitely bring honour to the nation and fulfill the hopes and dreams of the country's 140 crore citizens.
हम खेलने के लिए जा रहे हैं, हम अपना बेस्ट परफॉर्मेंस के लिए जा रहे हैं, लेकिन ओलंपिक सीखने का भी बहुत बड़ा मैदान होता है। फलाना देश कैसे खेल रहा है, टिकना देश कैसे खेल रहा है, और वो चीज़ों को पूरी तरह ऑब्जर्व करता है, कोशिश करता है एब्सॉर्ब करने की, और आकर के अपने कोच को भी बताया कि यार भाई मैंने देखा उसने तो बड़ा कमाल कर दिया था लास्ट मोमेंट, अब मुझे भी बताइए वो क्या टेक्निक थी। कभी उस वीडियो को लेकर के 10 बार देखता है कि उसने कैसे उसको पलटा था। तो इन्हें जो सीखने की वृत्ति से काम करता है उसके लिए सीखने के बहुत अवसर होते हैं।
The Indian Prime Minister also spoke about the prospects of hosting the 2036 Olympics.
भारत की कोशिश है कि हम 2036 में ओलंपिक की मेजबानी हमारे देश में करें। उससे भी एक बड़ा माहौल बनता है कि हमारी दिशा में हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं और हो सकता है शायद अभी तैयारियां इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए जो चाहिए उस पर काम काफ़ी चल रहा है। जो भी एक्सपर्ट लोग हैं उस पर काम कर रहे हैं। खिलाड़ियों से जो इनपुट मिलता है तो जब हम 2036 की तैयारी करेंगे वो इनपुट बहुत काम आएगा कि भाई वहाँ ये था, वहाँ वो था, वहाँ इस चीज़ की कमी थी, वहाँ उस चीज़ की कमी थी। तो ऐसी चीज़ें भी अगर आप ऑब्जर्व करके आएंगे तो 2036 के लिए हमें जो करना है उसमें हमें बहुत सुविधा मिलेगी।
Meanwhile, India's unified payments interface UPI went live at the flagship store of the world-renowned Galeries Lafayette in Haussmann, Paris. Javed Ashraf, ambassador of India to France, launched the UPI service by its live use at the store. This comes days ahead of the Paris Olympics starting on July 26th. Launched in the year 2016 in India, the Unified Payments Interface is a system that allows users to make instant mobile payments between bank accounts using a single app. And on to all the action from Euro 2024. Host Germany will face off against Spain in the first quarter-final of the tournament in Stuttgart on Friday. Germany takes on fellow title contender Spain in their mouth-watering clash, hoping to end a winless run at the tournament against them that stretches back to 1988. Meanwhile, the Portugal squad also held a training session ahead of their Euro 2024 quarter-final clash against France. To advance in the tournament, Roberto Martinez's squad must first get past World Cup finalists France, who have flattered to deceive so far in Germany. Ace Indian cubist Pankaj Advani booked his spot in the final of the 2024 Asian Billiards Championship. He defeated Sri Krishna Suryanarayanan 5-0 in the quarter-final round and Saurav Kothari 5-0 in the semi-final round. In the quarter-final match against fellow opponent Sri Krishna Suryanarayanan, Pankaj Advani showcased his exceptional skills. Advani's dominance was evident as he consistently outplayed his opponent with precision and finesse. Pankaj Advani's performance throughout the match was nothing short of spectacular. With consistent 100 breaks and a dominant presence on the table, Advani reaffirmed his status as a top-tier billiards player and secured his place in the final. And finally, thousands gathered at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July to witness a fireworks display celebrating the U.S. Independence Day. The dazzling fireworks illuminated the night sky for approximately 17 minutes. So with those Independence Day celebrations in the United States, we wind up this edition of DD India News Hour. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on our different social media handles. And for those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates across India and the world on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.